Halloween. You know, the one with the guy in the white mask who walks around and stalks babysitters?
Yeah.
What's yours?
Guess.
Nightmare on Elm Street.
Is that the one where the guy had knives for fingers?
Yeah, Freddy Krueger.
Freddy, that's right. I like that movie. It was scary.
Wow, well, the first one was, but the rest sucked.
Wes, I love you, man.
You're so cute.
In the early to mid-90s, the horror genre was fading fast. Studios weren't making them much anymore, they were seen mostly as jokes, and to be fair, a lot of them were, and some were even seen as box office poison. Slowly but surely, this genre that had once been beloved by so many began to wither and die in Hollywood. Then, up-and-coming writer Kevin Williamson, a devout fan of the genre, saw a news report about the Gainesville Ripper and began writing the film we would one day know as Scream. A film that was self-referential and mixed elements of horror with dark comedy. Soon after, it was picked up by Dimension Films. So who was going to direct it? Well, it may shock you to know that Wes Craven initially turned this movie down. Yeah, apparently at that point in his career, he didn't want to make another slasher film. He was making more experimental films at the time, like Serpent in the Rainbow and The People Under the Stairs, and didn't want to go back to the roots that had made him famous. Keep in mind, Wes Craven never wanted to do horror in the first place. He wanted to do drama. However, two things eventually caused him to take the job. One was the casting of Drew Barrymore, who was a big actress at the time. The second was apparently a kid coming up to him and telling him, "You should make another kick-ass movie," which made Wes Craven think that he'd gone soft. So eventually, Wes caved in and returned to his slasher roots with Scream. Long story short though, while the film was in post-production, the MPAA refused to give Scream an R rating, and instead slapped it with an NC-17, the box office kiss of death. They claimed that the film was too shocking and too intense, to which Wes Craven replied, "It's murder. It should be shocking and intense." Again, Wes, you're so awesome. Obviously, the studio didn't want to release a film with an NC-17 rating, however, so Wes Craven was forced to cut several gory elements out of the movie. However, even his cuts didn't sway the ratings board. Finally, with the December release date approaching, Bob Weinstein went to the ratings board in a last-ditch effort to save the film. When the MPAA watched the film again, they called Wes Craven to inform him that they had given Scream an R rating. When Craven asked Weinstein how he accomplished this, Bob Weinstein simply replied, "I told him it was a comedy." Sidney Prescott, played by Neve Campbell, is dealing with the 1-year anniversary of her mother's murder, when a killer suddenly goes on a rampage, calling and taunting his victims before killing them, and evidently being inspired by scary movies. When people around Woodsboro begin dropping like flies, Officer Dewey is on the case, snob reporter Gail Weathers is looking to cash in, and Sidney discovers that the murders may have more to do with her mother's murder than she thought. With time running out and her friends on the chopping block, Sidney, Dewey, and Gail must uncover the truth before it's too late. What's your favorite scary movie? Scream has every character you expect in a slasher film. You have the virgin, you have the mysterious boyfriend, you have the smartass, the hot best friend, the nerd who can't get the girl. Every kind of character you'd expect in a slasher film is in Scream. However, it also has characters you'd expect from a good mystery thriller, like the reporter trying to make a name for herself, and the bumbling detective who gets sucked into everything. With that said, Scream, in terms of its plot and its story, was something that no other horror film before it really was. A horror film that riffed other horror films in both subtle and unsubtle ways. There are so many references to other horror movies in Scream, it would be impossible to list them all. On top of this, it points out the problems and cliches of horror films. It's equal parts horror and parody. Scream is a film so self-referential, it sets a standard for how meta a movie can actually be. The jersey that Peyton wears in the film is the same jersey Johnny Depp wore in A Nightmare on Elm Street. Wes Craven makes a cameo as a janitor named Fred. Freddy Krueger was a janitor. In the opening, when the parents come home wondering what happened to their daughter, the father tells her to go up the road to the Mackenzies and call the police. These are the same instructions Laurie gave to Tommy and Lindsay in the first Halloween. The boyfriend's name is Billy Loomis, another obvious reference to Halloween. Casey hanging in the tree looks like the opening to Suspiria. Hell, the entire opening scene is a reference to When a Stranger Calls, and the plot itself is eerily similar to Prom Night. No, seriously, they even point that out to us in the film. Twice. In the same scene.
Because obviously they don't watch enough movies. This is standard horror movie stuff. Prom Night Revisited, man. See, the police are always off track with this shit. If they'd watch Prom Night, they'd save time. There's a formula to it. A very simple formula. Everybody's a suspect.
However, that's where the fun of Scream comes in. Anyone who is a fan of slasher films will most likely love this movie. As a fan of old school slashers and horror films, I admired this film's self-awareness and sense of humor. It reminded us that slasher films can be incredibly dumb, the characters can do stupid things, but pointing those things out is all part of the fun. Anyone who has any idea of these cliches will probably get a kick out of this movie. This was writer Kevin Williamson's first produced screenplay, and I honestly think he did a fine job. The characters are reasonably well done. As I said before, they are the typical slasher film archetypes, but that was by design. So you can't really fault the movie for that. What makes it even better is that the characters are actually enjoyable. Matthew Lillard gets a few memorable batshit moments. Jamie Kennedy as Randy is also a ton of fun. I especially love when he goes nuts about horror films, going as far as to explain the rules of actually surviving them.
Jesus Christ, you don't know the rules?
Have an aneurysm, why don't you?
There are certain rules that one must abide by in order to successfully survive a horror movie. For instance, number 1, you can never have sex. No! Big no-no! Big no!
I'm a dead man.
Even in popcorn, sex equals death, okay? Number 2, you can never drink or do drugs. No, the sin factor. It's a sin. It's an extension of number 1. And number 3, never, ever, ever, under any circumstances say, I'll be right back. Because you won't be back.
I'm getting another beer. You want one?
Yeah, sure.
I'll be right back.
Neve Campbell as Sidney is a fun heroine and gets some good emotional depth. I would go as far as to say she's probably Craven's best heroine since Nancy in A Nightmare on Elm Street. I even loved the relationship between Dewey and Gale Weathers. David Arquette and Courtney Cox met on the set of this movie and would soon afterwards get married. And honestly, it's not hard to see why. These two have very good chemistry in their scenes together. The film is also brimming with intense and often scary moments. The opening scene is one of the best in horror film history in my opinion, and is actually a direct reference to the film Psycho. I don't think I'm spoiling anything by telling you that Drew Barrymore's character, Casey, gets axed off in the beginning. If you know the whole backstory behind this, then you know that Wes Craven originally wanted Barrymore to play the lead role of Sidney. However, when Drew read the script, she realized that the movie would be more powerful if she played Casey Becker. Keep in mind, Drew Barrymore was a huge name at the time, so killing her off early would not only harken back to Psycho, with big name actress Janet Leigh being killed off early in that film, it would instill into the audience's mind that no one was safe from this killer. Wes agreed, and the rest is history. This is why you will never hear me say a bad thing about Drew Barrymore. Not only is she a wonderful talent, but she turned down playing the lead role in a very successful series to make the series better. That's not just a great actress, that's a great person. So yeah, thanks Drew, we love you. Now if I have a problem with this film, I guess there is one downside, and sadly it is a big one. While the film tries to sell that everyone is a suspect, it's not hard at all to figure out who the killer is. I won't spoil it for those who haven't seen it, but the second the character came on screen, I knew he was the killer. Hell, the actor looks like one. Regardless of how people may feel about Scream, I know a lot of people out there really don't like it. It was the film that stuck a shot of adrenaline into the heart of the horror genre at a time when it desperately needed it. It not only revitalized the genre, it redefined it. It played a whole different ballgame and had an effect that no one saw coming. Much like Halloween did in 1978, Scream opened the doors for other studios to come out with a ton of other horror slasher clones. Valentine, Urban Legend, I Know What You Did Last Summer, The Faculty, and even old horror icons got a somewhat new lease on life with both Michael Myers and Chucky returning to the big screen in 1998. So yeah, as far as Wes Craven films go, Scream is definitely one of his best, and I'm giving it an A. The fact is, Scream had enough inventive ideas, brimming tension, funny comedy, fun characters, and good actors to keep it afloat, despite the mystery aspect of the killer not being too strong. Scream 2, on the other hand, well, that's another story.
Everybody's a suspect!
scared, are you? Squeak.